In this video, I'll show you how I made these rustic candle holders. Alfie and I have had a last-minute unplanned trip to Australia and we've bought one-way tickets. We don't know how long we're going to be here. You may recognise where I am if you've seen my parents' beach house tour. I'll explain the whole situation later in the video. But for now, in amongst spending time with family and friends and making the most of the beautiful weather and of course the beach across the road, which has been glorious. Because I wasn't planning to come here and it was so last minute, I was in the middle of my Olive Atelier part 2. I'll link to part 1 of that below. So I haven't been able to get to finish it. So I was really inspired by these Olive Atelier chunky candle holders. I really liked the look of them. So still on this same theme, I decided to give it a go. So my focus is going to be trying to recreate this rustic and handmade aged look with something that's not aged. I wanted to also try and do it as cheaply as possible because I just feel like it's something that will be achievable. So yeah, let's get into it. First stop was the outdoor pot section at the hardware store. I just had a feeling that I was going to find something really suitable there, and the terracotta section was really inspiring. I was immediately drawn to these interestingly shaped bowls, which came in a range of sizes, and they were quite well priced, I thought, for what they were. I realized that you could put them together and start to create that shape that I was wanting to make. So we got a couple of them, and then also just some standard terracotta saucers. And so we got them together and started playing around with different ways we could put them together to create different shapes, and it was quite inspiring. There's so many options. I'm really glad I got my sister Liv involved in this project to help me because she's an interior designer and she knows what's good and fancy, and she knows especially about expensive things, but it was really helpful having her help me make the decisions and also try and make these look as elevated and expensive as possible, even though they're just from the hardware store.
That's your 3 options, right?
Yeah, and then the bigger ones on top.
I think this is like definitely one, but I think we just do one like that because if you have the combo, we want them at different heights, I think.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, do we like this one or do we like that?
I think we like that one.
Yeah, okay, well let's do 2 of, I think all of them have this at the top though, it just finishes it.
Okay.
Like that feels like a nice scheme.
Now, as usual, my project grew arms and legs and I decided that I wanted to try a giant version of it. This was not at all what I was planning to do, but you know, you get there and you get inspired. I thought it could look cool filled with sand and then have incense and candles in it. This was something that I saw in Mykonos years ago and I've always thought about it and wanted to recreate it myself. So after a lot of playing around with different options, we ended up settling for one that used that same bowl shape as the candle holders. What do you think, Liv? Should we just get everything we're looking at right now?
Yeah.
So we packed up all of our things and went for a walk around the store just to see if we could get any ideas. We were interested in looking for interesting and different paint finishes.
A well executed product. I feel happy with it. It's a very timeless finish because it's just showing signs of like aging and wear. There's a variation in colour and I feel confident that even someone like me could do a good job applying it.
Okay, so it's worth $100.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shopping list. So we need the Dulux Design Effect Rust Effect base paint and Effects Rust Effect solution. So you just apply it in 2 steps.
So on our way out, of course, I got a Bunnings hat. I don't know how many other hardware stores in the world have their own merch, but that's just one of many reasons why I love Bunnings so much. So to review what we got, I got various sizes of the bowls and the saucers, and then I went overboard buying paintbrushes and of course this rust solution. Now this was quite expensive. It was almost $100 for the 2 parts that you need for the effect, but I just thought I really want to test it out. So the plan is to try to do a stone effect on these small candle holders, but then test out this rust solution on the larger one. Now I have no idea if it's going to work. I'm just basically testing it out. So we can call this an experiment where I waste my money so you don't have to waste yours. So with testing out candles, I was really interested in this glass hurricane. This is just what was lying around the house and it actually fit perfectly and I really like the look of it. So I'm definitely interested in trying to find a set of 3 that are all the same size that would work together as a set. But in the meantime, I just tried some chunkier candles. I first tried them in the bowls and then I tried putting them on the saucers on top just to compare. And I think that honestly, both options look good. I really think that you could do it either way depending on what you prefer. Now, since starting this project, I've started noticing terracotta bowls and various things that you could use for this type of project everywhere. I found this citronella candle locally. I thought it was actually a really interesting alternative, and I tested it out that night, and that really is its own little thing as well. Like, I really think that looked quite cool and it fit in with the scheme. I also was really tempted at this point to just keep them terracotta because I actually like the way that they look. But I decided, no, we're going to continue with the project. So the next day I set up an area ready to do the big pot. This was really the big experiment of this that I really didn't know how it was going to turn out. So step one was painting on the base layer, and in retrospect I probably should have done an undercoat of like normal black paint, but I didn't, and so I just did it on the terracotta, and for that reason I had to do a few more coats than otherwise I would have needed to because the terracotta kind of soaked it in. It was just like bad decisions all round, but here we are. But while I paint this in many coats, I might as well explain why I am in Australia. I wasn't expecting to be here at all, and I have actually bought a one-way ticket because sadly 6 weeks ago my dad was diagnosed with aggressive blood cancer, and so Alfie and I have come to spend time with dad before he starts his treatment. He's been lucky enough to have a 10 out of 10 match with one of his sisters who is kindly donating her stem cells to him, and hopefully it's going to save his life. So I'm just trying to make the most of this situation, have a fun project while we're in Australia, enjoy spending time with dad, and being grateful for everything that we have and all the time we have together with all of our loved ones, really. One thing that I didn't know about stem cells is just how hard it is to find a match. Basically, when you donate blood, depending on your blood type, your blood would be able to match with 1 in maybe 2 or 4 people. But with stem cells, the chances of you being a 100% match with a stranger is actually 1 in 100,000. The chances are higher with siblings, but not everyone has siblings, or not everyone's siblings are still alive. And even if you do have siblings, you still might not even have a match. So I'm gonna go on the register. It's really easy. You only need to give a saliva sample and then you just sit on the worldwide register. And you might never actually be called up to do it, but if you did turn out to be a match for someone at some point in your life, you could literally save someone's life. But speaking of dad, he interrupted my pot project because he wanted to chop down this tree. Nice. Yeah, go right back. Mum always gets really angry at Dad for chopping stuff down in the garden, but I told Dad, you've got cancer, you can do what you want. Well done. That's much better. Well done. But back to my candle holder project, it was time to glue the pieces together. I carefully picked a glue that would work well with this type of material. I'm always a bit scared to use glue, so I was very careful and I just placed them on top of each other. What I found worked best was to just lay them out in the order that I knew that they went in, and then I just picked up each one after the other as I glued it together. So after letting the glue completely dry, it was time to think about the finish and how I was going to get that stone effect. So I got Liv involved in this, and she certainly had a lot of opinions about how it was supposed to be done. So while these are drying, I think I focus on this one, paint it with my white paint that I bought, water it down, use a dry one of these like rough brushes, and then do it on there, see what it looks like. If it doesn't look good, I can go with it, otherwise I add plaster on top and it's not the end of the
like a white textured situation.
Yeah.
You could colour it though as well.
I could colour it.
Rather than being white. Oh,
but
no, this is like
uh-oh.
this colour.
Okay, so it'd be that colour.
Concrete colour.
Whoops. Okay, but I could paint over that or something. But the question is about the seams. Do I want to fill them in with that stuff?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. So my first test was to try some watered down white paint directly onto the terracotta. I tried this in a project recently and I really liked the effect. I'll leave a link below to the full video where I tried it for the first time. So to test it out, I tried it on that citronella candle I had found because it wouldn't matter as much if I stuffed it up. I started with a really watery mixture and I quite liked the effect actually, but then I kind of got a bit overconfident and I tried it with some less watered down paint, and it was just a bit too heavy-handed, I think. But then I was like, oh, I've committed to it, so this is what we're doing. But then I was just feeling impatient. So let me just try it on the candle holder and see what it looks like. Maybe I'll like it more on the big version of it. And I didn't. It sort of looked cool. I thought I couldn't decide if I liked it or not. I think it does have a nice effect for certain scenarios, but I think what I found frustrating was I had really started with a specific inspiration image and it was just so far away from what I was originally intending to do. So when I decided I wasn't happy with it and I wanted to commit to that original aesthetic that I had started with, I was feeling really just impatient. And so I literally just started putting plaster directly onto that test bowl, which I know is a bad idea. I should have done all sorts of things to better prepare the surface, but I was just being impatient. And evidently Liv thought I needed an intervention.
Let me do it.
Okay.
It's just... Is this how you plan to apply it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
I don't think so.
Okay. What should I do then?
Well, this sort of thing, unless you want to spend a lot of time at it, it's going to take a lot of work.
What are your thoughts? Do you have any ideas?
So this is just an effect, so we need to let this dry, and then I guess the next step is painting on top of it. And if you like then that as a finish, all this is telling us is texture. It's not telling us anything else.
I'm happy with that.
You need something smaller and softer. Can I use this?
Yeah.
Because
that kind of is better, isn't it?
As soon as you do that, you've got that more of that grit. You know, you don't really need to add sand to that. I reckon you do it like this, so it looks like it's on a wheel.
My concern is keeping this texture here. It still would though, wouldn't it?
Well, let's do it over a thing. Go back and you can cut it in if you think you want that.
That's not a bad idea. What do you think?
I think probably go without, but I think what you need is a smaller brush so you can like just get the brush effect but have the right amount of...
What about this brush? This brush is an angled brush.
No, you just need a small, like an eyeshadow brush to do those little sections.
So then we tried mixing in some paint because we wanted to see if it was possible to create a stone kind of colour.
Do we want to do a sample of that and just see what that
might as well
is like? I want to definitely look at that colour when it dries, and in the daylight here it looks a bit like sickly purple green, but we can tweak the colour, no probs.
Okay.
But it might dry a bit more like where we want it to be, and it could just
put
be that
the
it's
rust stuff on it as well.
Yeah, and so then I do one over here. You get 2 sample options with colours, and then out of that you should...
So we started mixing some paint to test some colour samples.
What's happening here in less than 30 weeks?
We're just doing a final test on this
Sampling.
thing. It's getting better.
Some yellow is what we would be needing. Let's do this. You know, this is heading in a direction.
Yeah, let's go for it. So we tested a few colours, but I didn't really see much point in it because I was committed to making progress that day. I was in a very impatient mood, so I just took the leftover of the final colour we made, which was the best colour, I thought. I just slapped it all over the terracotta candle holders as is. I probably should have prepared the surface better before applying it, but you live and you learn, so that's something that I would definitely remember for next time. So while they were drying, I decided that it was time to progress the larger project, and I thought that it would be best to glue it at this point so that as I applied that rust solution, the rust effect would happen in the final position. So I was really careful with this rust solution. It had a whole load of warnings on the tin, and I used a brand new brush and just carefully painted it onto the pot. But as you can see, it's very watery. It's basically just like water. It was pretty hard to believe that it was really doing anything. I just sort of was trying to trust the process. So then I just left it to see how long it would take for the rust effect to start to show. So then I started playing around with my final candle holders, and I liked them, but I thought that they just looked a little bit basic and I needed some more dimension. So I mixed up a new batch of a slightly darker color, and I painted it on a bit thicker and a bit more inconsistently, and just really gave it a go of trying to make it have like a rustic look and making it look more imperfect and aged. And I think that this definitely made them more interesting to look at and made them look more handmade as well. I was quite happy with this, but I wasn't entirely happy. I still thought there was a need for a little bit more dimension rather than just these two different colors that I had. So thinking back to a previous project I'd done, I just got some tea and I just painted it on really roughly and let some of the droplets settle, and then others I really brushed in. I was really trying to create a natural, organic, inconsistent effect. And this really worked, and to be honest, I probably should have done more. What I found also really helped was opening up the tea bag and literally just rubbing the raw tea just into the surface and coming back with some water on a brush and just painting it in and really rubbing it in. It just created so much extra dimension onto this, and it is really what took this from looking like some painted things to something that actually looks aged and old and unique and handmade maybe. But before I show you the final result, I have bad news about the larger one. It's been a few days and nothing has happened. I don't know how long it's supposed to take. All of the documentation online is really ambiguous. So I don't know if it's like gonna take weeks or something, but it's sitting under the house and I'm hoping that something happens to it at some point. But for now, it's sitting there. I'm crossing my fingers that something is going to happen and one day it will look cool and rustic, but at this point in time, it's been a waste of $100. So that's sad. I'm just going to give it a few weeks and see if anything happens. And if it does, I'll let you know. So make sure you subscribe if you want to stay updated on how that goes. But in the meantime, my candle holders were ready just in time for a party that my parents were having that night. So it was a good chance to take them for a spin. We set them up on the dining table and they looked just really good. They were just something different, you know? And especially knowing that we're at the beach, they're quite beachy and rustic and very much embodying the vibe of the area. So I'm completely happy with them. I got lots of compliments on them and I think I'd like to make even more. So when it comes to the actual terracotta pots, there's a link in the description below to the terracotta pots that I use. But what I really learned from this is that basically anything with a bowl shape will work to create this hourglass type of silhouette. And of course you could actually make this in any shape you wanted. The curve shape is what I was really inspired by and what was in the original image that I sort of challenged myself to recreate. And I think considering where I started and considering how cheap and easy this was, I just think it was a success and I'm really, really happy with how they turned out.
Don't blow out.